This is Brighton Racecourse, full description. We'll go over course topography with a flyover and some photographs. We'll have an example race, go over the draw, go over the standard times and fastest times at the track, do seconds per length over 5 and 6 furlong, and have a full conclusion. Here's the course topography and flyover examples. This is Brighton Racecourse according to the Racing Post map or guide. This is the start of the 1 mile, 1 furlong, 207 yards. They've got all the distances on here are incorrect, but the starting positions are more or less correct. So as you can see, at the 1 mile 2-ish start, it is uphill. It is all then downhill, really, up until about here. It looks uphill here, but it isn't. And as you can see, they don't actually give the correct topography. The uphill finish is not as long as this. This makes it look a lot longer than it is. And the winning line, it does level out about here for 50 yards or so. So this is Brighton Racecourse. The arrow on the right hand side, the red arrow on the right hand side of your screen, is the 1 mile, 1 furlong, 260 yards start. Okay, at the bottom, this is the topography. So when they come out these stalls, 1 mile 2 or 1 mile, 1 furlong, 207 yards is the official distance. They go uphill. And then, peak of the hill, they start to come down. Where the arrow is now is the start of the mile course, which is actually 7 furlong, 216 yards. As you can see, that distance is virtually all downhill. Then we come where the arrow is currently. That's the start of the 7 furlong, which is actually 6 furlong, 210 yards. Again, downhill. And there, where the arrow is now, just across from Wilson's Avenue, which is the path which goes through the centre of the track, that's the start of the 5 furlong, 215 yards, which in your paper will be 6 furlong. And then we come to the start of the 5 furlong, which is actually 5 furlong and 60 yards. Now, at 5 furlong and 60 yards, they start virtually on the bend. But when they do start, it's actually quite flat. So, pretty flat. Almost up, in fact, probably uphill to about there, which is 4 furlongs or so from the finish. So, when they come off the bend, almost on the crux of the bend, it's all downhill on what is, it's an arcing straight, so it arcs slightly left, and then they reach this point here, which is about 2 furlongs out, where the ground levels off briefly, slight dip there, and then just over a furlong out, about 1 furlong and a quarter, it starts to rise. And then, I'd say there, which is about 70 yards. 70 yards from the finish line, it levels off. So as you can see, a relatively fast track. All of it virtually downhill, apart from 1 mile, 1 furlong, 270 yards, which is 10 furlongs. What I have here is a 1 mile start at Brighton, which is actually 7 furlongs, 216 yards. Let's play the video. So they start at the top of the hill. This is a decent field sides, and they kind of come across right, which is kind of cutting the corner. So what they've just gone past there is the 7 furlong, which is 6 furlong, 210 yards. And then they continue on to this point here. Now, just after Wilson Avenue, which you can see here, so we're talking about here, is the 5 furlong and 215 yard start. And then as they approach the bend, what we are now seeing is the 5 furlong start. And as you can see here, it almost starts on a bend. So now they're hugging the left hand rail, or the far side rail. It's all downhill, and they come down this very, very steep hill off the bend. As you can see, all the bend down a very, very steep hill. All downhill. Now you can see here the rail cuts away. That's to allow horses up the rail, whereas before they used to hang into the rail and a lot of horses couldn't get past. Now they're hitting the rising ground, and they're all bunching because the camber now forces all the horses, these here, into the rail. Now you've got horses here. Some of them have got the whips in the right hand. He's got his whip in his right hand. He's coming across, you see. And this is what happens. You've got to be very, very careful at Brighton. The camber forces the horses into the rail. A lot of jockeys, if they're coming on the outside, will have the whip in the left hand. So this is Brighton Racecourse just after the 1.5 mile start. Let's take a look. So as you can see, these distances, 1 mile 2 plus, it's uphill, and then you come to the top of the bend, and then it's all downhill. Okay, going downhill, it's all bends left and right. And you come to Wilson Avenue. This is where the 6 furlong starts just after, and the 5 furlong starts, which starts just before this bend. So 5 furlong start, more or less a flat level start, but as you come off the bend, downhill, sweeping left turns, down the hill, down we go onto the straight, which is actually not quite straight. It arcs left up until about here. Then it's uphill, up we go. Then it levels off 60, 70 yards before the winning post, which is just there. So from this angle, which is well past the finishing line, which you can see here, this is the winning line here. You can see how they come round the bend onto the straighter rail, but you can see how the course, the camber forces horses into the course, into the rail on the far side. And just about here is when they hit the rising ground. And then just before the finish line, 60, 70 yards at the most, it levels off. This is a photograph of Brighton Racecourse head on. You can see they arc left, and then the cutaways there. The ground levels off, and then it's uphill. You can see the 1 furlong pole here. They're well going uphill. Probably 300 yards away, it starts going uphill. It levels off the bend a little bit for about 100 yards. Then they hit the rising ground. So the 10 and 12 furlong is uphill. It's an uphill start until just before the 1 mile start. At 1 mile or less, it's mainly downhill. It does level off around about 2 furlongs from home, very briefly, about 100 yards or so, and then it's uphill for 300 yards or so until the last 70 yards where it levels off to the line. It's very undulating, with an adverse camera taking the horses into the rail. The draw. A low draw is an advantage in sprints, but it's more important possibly to lie handy. These are the standard times, Racing Post and my own, and the fastest time in the last 5 years. Notice that the standard times are faster in some cases than the fastest time in the last 5 years. This is owing to the poor quality of the racing at Brighton. Okay, this is how long it takes an horse at Brighton according to standard times to travel 10 feet. As you can see, Brighton is almost on a par with Epsom, but the 5 furlong and 6 furlong are identical times almost. Well, they are 0.171. It's a very fast track, and what it is, the 5 furlong starts almost on a bend, so that the horses are not able to get into a fast stride. They're so busy trying to sort out their positions into the bend, they don't really get going quick enough. But once they get round the bend, it's downhill. So it's on a par with Epsom. Much faster than your average galloping track, which is Doncaster, and easier than a stiff track such as Pontefract. In conclusion, it's a left-handed U-shaped tricky track. It suits the handy type of horse that can race prominently or lead. You need a very well balanced horse because of the downhill nature, uphill, undulations and the adverse camber of the track. On soft and heavy ground, middle to stand side is where you'll find the horses coming up on the straight. The draw advantage is low to middle in sprints, but again, it is better to be able to lie handily. You can come from behind if you can get momentum into the uphill furlong and a half hill to the finish. Course experience is a huge advantage, and horses with course experience and course and distance form do repeatedly win at Brighton. If you like the video, please like and subscribe.